So, good morning. Yesterday we went carefully through the Rivosh, which is the basis of the Psak in Simon Avan Ezer Chavvav Aleph and Kuf Mem Tes, that two people who live together, but they don't go through a process of Chuppah V'Kiddushin, Goy Shenosa Goya, Umuma Shenosa Mumeres. Remember the converso that came from Mallorca and asked the Rivosh, the Shaila, about her and her son, and the Rivosh told us that Ein Choshishin L'Kiddushin. There's no Kiddushin. And he enumerated a number of reasons. Who can tell me who did the homework?
I mean, you said pick three, which you would...
2, 3. Did anybody manage to do any work on this? Write a summary? No. Okay. Yeah, you did. Good, Saturday.
I just took like the
great
main
stuff. Go for it.
So the first point was that he makes clear that there's no such thing as marriage. There's only either Kiddushin or Zanut.
For a
Jewish
good.
Right.
For a Jew,
right.
There are only two options on the menu.
So
there's either Znus or Kiddushin.
Right. So everything in between, which would be taken into consideration with two Jews, is either one of those. Yeah. So then.
And since these people got married in a church, therefore it's not Kiddushin, and the only other option is
Znus. Then after we arrive at this Znus dead end, he tries to find some heter to say, okay, maybe even those who would hold that if there's a bia after, which is not with his ex-wife, but would also come for others.
That's the Rambam, the Miktzah Sagaonim.
Right, so
on.
She would say that maybe we can find something there to hold with the opinion of those who would say
those Gaonim.
Even not the ex-wife.
Yes.
But then the problem is that it would be only a heter for two Jews if they would be Becheskas Kesherim.
And therefore they're not Ksherim. They're not Ksherim. There was no. She definitely didn't go to mikveh before, so they're quite happy to live together.
There would be even a bigger problem of Nida.
Of Nida.
So then it's like it would be
right. So there's no Eidim. There's no Eidei Yichud.
Yeah.
The fact that they live together as man and wife is meaningless for a Jew.
Yeah.
For a goy, it is. There's Beulas Baal, and in fact, the Rambam Paskins. From our perspective, how does a Ben Noach divorce his wife?
Right, that's the next point.
We didn't actually do that yesterday.
How
does a Ben? Yeah. Thank you. Well done, Gabby.
The thing was that he would find maybe a heter, like if he looks at the heter for goyim, it would be that they would say every act of exclusivity between two people would count as Kiddushin.
Yeah.
But then we say they're not Jewish. They're not goyim.
Correct. So for Jews, there are only two options. It's either Kiddushin or Znus. And finally, thank you, well done. Thank you. And finally, which I didn't mention yesterday, is how does from our perspective, how does a Ben Noach dissolve a marital relationship? They have something that's called, who remembers the terminology? They have Beulas Baal. Gemara in Sanhedrin. They have Beulas Baal. That when a Ben Noach, a man and woman, live together and have a family, that it does have a status of so-called an Aish Ish. If a Ben Noach has an affair with another Ben Noach woman who is Beulas Baal, there's Chayiv Misa. Because that there is a concept, but that's only a halachic construct that is available to them. It's not available to Jews. It's not available to us. How does it go? Just to finish it off, how does a Ben Noach dissolve the Beulas Baal status? Anybody know? Any idea? No? You either know or you don't. It's a Rambam. It's very simple. He walks out the house. They go. They just physically dissolve. There's no procedure as such. Poira, she just walks away. Okay? This now sets the background. Now, I don't know whether you can see here in my file, I'm doing more research on this, and this is where I'm up to so far, just on this topic. It is absolutely massive, and it is very, very, very topical. So I decided to do the following. Thought about this a lot, because we will see teshuvas of the very recent poskim. Reb Shlomo Zalman, Reb Eliashiv, the Chazon Ish, Reb Moshe Sternbuch, Reb Moshe, etc., etc. But actually, it comes to the fore. Funnily enough, it seems, I wouldn't say the epicenter of it, but there was significant halachic input from this Beis HaMedrash. And therefore, what you have over here is, and I want to do it this way. The way I want to do it is, we're going to learn one of the chulas from the Melamed Lahoyel, David C. Hoffman, and then we will do one from the Seridey Aish, even though there is more. And then finally, I knew I left it out. At the end of your bundle, we have a letter from Reb Chaim Ozer Grodzinsky, from his Igros, a psak from Reb Chaim Ozer, and we'll take it from there. So we're kind of, we're going to be learning a massive chiddush. One of the big chidushim here was a chiddush of the Rogatchover. The Rogatchover. Are you familiar with the Rogatchover, who he was? Okay, so we'll have to do that. There's a fascinating and interesting chiddush. So, no further ado. So we're jumping right into the 20th century, pretty much. Okay? Melamed Lahoyel, Chelik Gimel, Siman Chaf. First page on your bundle, bottom of the page, that's where it starts, Teshuvah. And I'll read and translate and explain it. Be'inyan nisuim ezrachiyim, shanasu beloy kiddushin kadas Moshe v'Yisrael. Yeah? Ha'im ha'isha yechola lotzeis beloy get. So, a Jew and a Jewess marry in the registry office, church, whatever it is, and then this partnership, from their perspective, it's a marriage, it breaks down. Does she need a get? And this is, of course, when Gedolei Yisrael speak, their language is peppered with quotes, Chazal and Tanakh, and this is, of course, the famous the Gemara in Bava Metzia in the year Shalom Midas. It's the field that the old everybody's already walked through it. It's just a lashon, yeah. So he now will give you some of the earlier Gedolim who've started pasking this. Maram Shik, Siman Chaf Aleph, Ha'elu Medina Di Yesh Lahati Beloy Get. The Maram Shik, who was the primary Talmud of the Chasam Sofer, Hungary. That's going to be important. We'll see it later. It's very interesting that the Seridey Aish of Weinberg is going to, when he indexes the way the poskim paskin, he does it by, he sort of sees it as a Hungary versus Galicia thing. He uses those words. Really, really interesting. So it's just interesting to note. So the Maram Shik Hela Medina de Medina Yesh Lahati Beloy Get. The Maram Shik says a Jew and a Jewess who live together, civil marriage. Medina, they don't need a get. Ach kosa de lemaisa tzorachiyun. But lemaisa he says tzorachiyun. V'acharav nosam v'nosam b'dova merab Avram karpeles b'shut oil Avram because of shesh lochush shel isr chomosh shel eishes ish mishum chazok ein odom oisa bilasa bilaznus. And this, of course, was the other sugi that we looked at. Yes, Gittin Daf Peyalav. We will revisit this at a later stage. When do we say chazaka ein odom oisa bilasa bilaznus, and we assume that he had kavana for kiddushin? Even the civil Gentile society, why are they being intimate? They've been to the registry office. You ask them, what are you doing? Say, we're behaving as man and wife. In their mind, it's man and wife. So maybe we have the chazaka ein odom oisa bilas bilaznus. V'nisgayru v'nisyachtu be'edim yashlochus lezeh. Maybe if there was gior, if they were miyachid be'edim, kidamashma barash bats, huva bebeis yosef even ezo seif simen kuf chav zayin, shitun kubetza seif perka koisev shel tegibayrim ubash seif simen samach zayin, v'chein ba'anusim umumrim kumish chasav abei shmuel v'chelkus chmachoykek. That's the rivosh that we learnt. U'makin shom b'kuntras achar ne'marmokim shom al shut chasam seif v'hisim shom al tamim marim shik shekazim shelochot shebal l'shem kiddushin Reb Shlomo Shlik b'shuvas rashban even as similar. Don't worry, I'm just running through this. Now here we get to a really interesting thing, and here we come to a principle in Hoira'ah, which is fascinating. I don't know who this was, but there was somebody called Rav Shlomo Shik in Shuvas Rashban, Even Ezer Siman Tzadi Vav. I haven't looked up to see who it is. I imagine it's an Achron. He wrote as follows. Given that we as Rabbonim, as custodians of the Torah, have an obligation to publicize, to demonstrate in a clear way that a civil marriage, as far as we are concerned, is ganex. It's not chuppah v'kiddushin. We have that obligation. Because kol ha-mekadesh adata d'Rabbanan mekadesh. We know that. What do we say? Kol ha-mekadesh, anybody who does kiddushin, it's adata d'Rabbanan. That's why we say kedas Moshe v'Yisrael. We don't do it in any other mitzvah. Remember, this is a mitzvah d'oraisa. Ki yikach ish ishra. It's just a mitzvah. We don't say, I'm putting on tefillin, kedas Moshe v'Yisrael. Only there. There's a special idea of kol de mekadesh, adata d'Rabbanan mekadesh, and this has various halachic implications, which we'll probably get to. So therefore, given, in other words, he's saying specifically in Kiddushin, we the Rabbanan have a duty we're trustees, as it were, of this institution, this halachic institution of Kiddushin. And therefore, yesh lo malon, sha'afilu im boy l'shem Kiddushin. So this, not Maram Sheikh, Rav Shlomo Sheikh says, that even if he was boy l'shem Kiddushin, ein b'maisa hazeh shum Kedusha v'zeh mitzad geder u'siyag. So this Rab Shlomo Sheikh comes up with an incredible chiddush. He says, given that we have an obligation to safeguard, to protect the institution, the halachic institution of Kiddushin, therefore, even if it could be that this fellow who gets married civilly, for whatever reason, but maybe he did have a mind l'shem Kiddushin and not l'shem zanus, and therefore maybe really it is me'ika hadin Kiddushin, but we're going to override that because we have a greater obligation to demonstrate civil marriage is garnished, and therefore we're going to say it's nothing. Va'alkin posek she'enot tzricha get v'loy chalitza, and Reb David Hoffman is not a happy bunny. Sorry, I don't mean to be flippant. He is not happy about this at all. And this again gives you an insight into his derech. Ulefi ani izdaiti kosho adova loima. This is a, yes?
I'm just confused. We have a suffix, if we don't, we have a suffix d'oraisa that they are married. Yes, and we don't give a get.
We may not.
I don't understand.
You're in good company. You're in good company. So let Reb David Tzvi Hoffman express your indignation for you and see whether this is your objection. It should be.
Yeah, I'm just intuitively like.
Yeah. You should be. You should be. He is, and I think that is precisely the amazement or the outrage, if I can say so, which Reb David Tzvi Hoffman here is expressing. Ulefiani is daiti kosha hadova leima d'Rabbanan bizmanenu yakru hakidushin. No. Sorry. I have to take slight issue, and it's my fault because I didn't clarify. The concept, the halachic idea of kol de mekadesh adata d'Rabbanan mekadesh means theoretically the Rabbanan, you vest authority in the validity of your marriage, you hand that over to Chazal. Mm-hmm. You hear that? Yep. Kol de mekadesh adata d'Rabbanan mekadesh. In other words, what would be if for some reason the Rabbanan, whoever they may be, but the Rabbanan turned around and said, you know what, sir? We have decided to invalidate your marriage. And they could do so theoretically. This is a story for another time. It's a Tosfos. This might be a way round. It's been proposed. We'll probably get to it at some point. Afkeinu Rabbanan Kiddushin. Very good, Gabby. Very impressed. Yes. So therefore, theoretically, they have the right. Forget Sophic Deraisa. That's not good. In other words, not forget it, but it's deeper than that. In other words, at a theoretical level, the Rabbanon, whoever they may be, do have the right to say, you know what, maybe there is a bit of a suffix. Maybe 1 out of 10 people who get married in a registry office, maybe they do have the da'as for that it shouldn't be znus, it should be kiddushin, maybe. So maybe there is a suffix, but the Rabbanon have the right to say, and this is what Reb Shlomo Sheikh is saying, we ought to take a stand and say, in order, because we also have a duty. I mean, that's the whole idea. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the sanctity of the kedusha and the I mean, look, of the Jewish family and yichus is so important that it was actually every chosan and kala that stands under the chuppah actually vests. They transfer, they delegate, if you like, that authority to Chazal, and Chazal can, and therefore, in other words, it's like you're making a condition. You're saying, whatever you guys say, whatever you say, it is a kedushin, yes. If not. And if you look at what's happening today in Klal Yisrael, it's not poshut. It's taka, not poshut. in yonim of yichus, in yonim of when you have intermarriage, you have all sorts of things. It's really not poshut. By the way, I'll just throw in as a quick aside, that's why many poskim, it's not so much done in, I haven't done it, but many poskim are of the opinion that when you, in the ksuba, certainly for the Eidim, you should not just write Reb Avram ben Reb Yitzchok Eid, but you should even write Le Mishpachas, and you should identify and clarify further who are these Eidim. So that a family name, Reb Moshe held that, Reb Eliashiv held that, Reb Shlomo Zalman held you should do that. In England they don't do it very much, but you know when we in the Midbar, we just learned about going out to Mitzrayim, and we were told that it was a wonderful thing that Klal Yisrael were Godur Ba'aroyos. There was one case, one story, Shleimus Bastivri, right? We all know that, one story. And they brought their Yichusehen. Yichus is really, really important. I don't mean Yichus in the, oh, my grandfather was a Hasidic Rebbe sense, in the sense of being able to demonstrate that that there is Yichus, whether it's a proper Gerus, whether it's whatever it is, but Yichus is really important. So there is a need, there is a thing of safeguarding. It is important. So that's what he means. So this, Reb Shlomo Shik was suggesting that because we need to demonstrate, people shouldn't make the mistake of thinking a civil marriage has some halachic validity. Therefore, we need to say outright, it's not Kiddushin, even though it could be in one or two cases, it might technically be that he did have kavanah. But even that he's not happy with. That Rabbanon nowadays, ye'okru ha-kiddushin afilu im bo'al l'shem kiddushin mitzad geder usyag. He is not prepared to accept the idea that rabbis, the rabbonim today, should, whether they have the power, they may have the power, but that a single posek here or someone should decree that we are going to invalidate any marriage which was based on a civil marriage, even though a small number of them may have been l'shem kiddushin. The bio was l'shem kiddushin, not l'shem znus, just because of geder usyag. Now, listen to how he goes on. Umanane l'rabonit Sarfat. He says, what are we going to tell the rabbis in France? Fascinating comment. Mm-hmm. What are we going to tell the rabbis in France? Im yomru she'rabonon yeyokru ha-kiddushim shel anoshim ha-poichazin hamaramim es neshoiseihem v'loichim memoinom v'oizvim oisom la'anochos. It seems there was, I don't want to use the word necessarily a trend, but it seems there were instances in France of empty people, not very nice people, who would cheat their wives financially, take their money and run away. So what are we going to say to the rabbis in France? We're going to say that, we're just going to uproot the marriages? Is that, where do you draw the line? If you may have the power to invalidate marriages, but that also needs to be exercised with caution, with foresight. Where are we going to draw the line? This is what he's saying. Seems this was something that was happening in France. I don't know. Seems it was a thing. So are we going to do that as well? It's very expensive. You have to pay the rabbi a lot of money under the chuppah. Right, Kobe? But it seems it was a good business. I mean, I'm obviously not doing it right. The reason that people didn't take a rav, and it's a sad comment. Actually, it's sad in a way. The reason that a person didn't take a rav for Kiddushin is because he couldn't afford to. Doesn't mean, in other words, he's saying many times there will be simple Erliche Yidden. And by the way, you do see this. You know, let me just finish his sentence, and not that he needs my haskama, of course. But he says it could be an average fellow, he may even be secular. But there are some times when, the old joke, used to say, Anglo Jewry comes alive at a funeral. That's when, people, that's when these significant moments in their lives, even though they may not keep Shabbos, or they may not, but they know a Jewish funeral, a chuppah. Doesn't matter for what reason. A Seder night, driving shul, Yom Kippur, whatever. There is still a certain, especially in England, it's very conservative, small c, still an attachment to tradition and, tradition, etc. The reason a person doesn't take a Rav for Kiddushin is because he can't afford to. So he says, I can't do it. Really, I'd have no problem having a rabbi. I think it's a lovely thing, white, and it's so sweet, it's really nice. But I can't afford it, and maybe that's the reason he does Nisum Ezrachim. But of course, the average person will not deliberately, when there's a good, nice, glatt, kosher beef burger in front of you, go to McDonald's and eat Issa. If he would know, in other words, there's an assumption. He's saying an incredible thing. The fellow that doesn't get the Rav to Kiddushin and goes to the marriage bureau is obviously not very knowledgeable. But we can make an assumption about him, about many of these people, and say the only reason they don't do it is because they can't afford to. But they've got nothing, they're not anti, they're nothing against it. And if they would know that he actually has another way of doing it, that you can drink in the last chance saloon, as we would say, to use the Western movie sort of metaphor. There's another way. You know what you can do? When you are intimate with your wife, you have intercourse, do it L'Shem Kiddushin and have Eidei Yichud. If he would know that, of course he would do it. Why not? It's free. So he can't afford the Rav for the Siddur Kiddushin, but he's still really, the average Joe, would be quite happy to be married Jewishly. Why not? So therefore, if he would know that he could be intimate with his wife l'shem kiddushin and have two guys standing outside in the corridor, why not? As Aish came, then we have no reason to suggest that he wouldn't do that. If you are going to say harav shik that every single case of civil marriage there is no need for a get, then lipa'omim natir eshes ish la'alma. Then what will emerge is that occasionally an Aishas Ish, we will allow an Aishas Ish out into the world, which is, of course, a terrible thing. What would be if in one or two of the cases, the husband, when he shows up in Beis Din, says, actually, no, I remember I learned Mishnayos Kiddushin in my youth. And I remember that you can be Mekadosh L'Shem Bia, and I had that in mind. And actually, for that reason, I told two of my friends just to stand outside. And they were guardians standing outside the house that night. It could happen. Sounds a bit far-fetched, but it could happen. We know. Are you really going to? Is the Rav in every case going to investigate why the guy did civil marriage and not a? You can't know. Asher al kain nirali lahatzrich get misafik. And by the way, I will spoiler alert. This is where we are going down the route, and you should know this is now the general rule in most Batei Din in the world. You want to know what they do lemaisa? We're still a long way. We've still got a lot of shiurim to get through it, the Chazon Ish and all the others, and then difficult cases. But you should know that, as far as I'm aware, and I've got the Psakei Din of the various Batei Din, this is what they do. If a man and a woman live together as husband and wife, and they had a civil marriage, we will ask them to give a get misafik. Before, let's say, one of them wants to, remarry, and then there's all shilas. What about kayan? What about having to pay money, mezainas? We'll get to all of that later, okay? But you should know, this idea, this is the first time we're coming across it, which is why I'm mentioning it. Obviously, Hoffman is saying, his view is, be matzrich get to misafik. V'rak toiv, sheyifarsimu hadova sherak machmas sofik shema bo l'shem kiddushin tzrichu get. But it is important that the Rabbonim or the Batei Din, however they do it, is that they say, in other words, the word shouldn't get round. Jack the other week he divorced his wife. They didn't have a chuppah, but they went to the Beis Din. The Beis Din made them get a get. Oh, really? Does that mean that civil marriage is good? No. So you somehow need to counter that. Yefarsimu hadova. We do have a responsibility to publicize that really it's nothing. It's a sofek. It's a bit of a sofek. That's why we make them give a get misofek. Gam yeshlochu shabal yetzilaz v'yemesh osapam achas ma'aseh kiddushin. It's also possible that the husband will be moitzi la'az. Are you familiar with this phrase, moitzi la'az? It's an important phrase in Hilchos Gittin, anyway. Which is to Yeah. Which is to spread a rumor to undermine the integrity of a process. It's very important in get, right? Not to be moitzi la'az as a cheir Rabbeinu Tam, not to be moitzi la'az on a get. We make in the Seder HaGet. I'll bring it in the other day. I got it in my office. The Seder HaGet that we use here, we we make the husband beforehand promise in front of Eidim that he will not later go and say, "Oh, I didn't mean it," or we make him make that undertaking, right? There's a Chayim of Rabbeinu Tam. Get to it maybe another time. So basically, he finishes off, and we'll stop here with this one. And he says, therefore, we are worried when it comes to Gittin. We do all sorts of things to make sure that there is no cast. The correct word in English is to cast aspersions on the validity of the get afterwards. To say afterwards, Laz, oh, I didn't mean it. It was no good, right? So Kal V'chomer says we should also do the same thing for Kiddushin, and therefore we need to be careful. So summarize what have we learned from the Melamed Lahoil? He paskins azay. He paskins. You need to get me sofik. In other words, me'ikadin, it's probably nothing. But it might occasionally be something because of he may have had kavanah for kiddushin and there may have been edim, and therefore we are matzricha get misofek. But we should also we have a responsibility to publicize that it's only misofek. Okay, that's his psak. Let's move on to the Seridey Aish. Next generation here in the Rabbiner seminar. Okay, and there's two tshuvas here, but the one that I want to learn with you is Siman Chof Beis. Seridey Aish, Siman Chof Beis. Okay? You have it there? Okay. So let's look at the date. The date is 1951, Montreux, which is where he was then. And it's written to Rav Baruch Halevi Lezarovsky, who was the Av based in München. Okay? Just give it some context. And this might be important because he has another tshuva which I've got on the next page, which is written 10 years later. But I'm going to give you a little bit of, I won't give you a background. We'll dive straight into it. Michtovoi kibalti esmail balayla. I got your letter last night. I thanks him for his bother and his friendship. In time, uzmanti lovoi izman katzel Paris l'shem birur eze inyonim. In the interim, I have been invited to go to Paris to clarify certain halachic matters. I promised them. I'm not sure about my travel plans yet, whether I'll be going to Paris first and then München, whatever, I'll let you know. Here's the quick case.
Classic rabbi.
Yeah. Be'isha shedorsa im ish blial. A Jewish woman lived with a secular person. Literally, blial means like a Rosha. Okay? She lived with him for many years. The Yolda Mimenu Ben, below Chuppah v'Kiddushin. They had a son together, no Chuppah v'Kiddushin. V'achakach ozav oisa, and then he abandoned her. Im muteres lihinose below get. Okay, heard the shayla before. So, can she remarry without a get? The guy's gone. So it's an aguna shayla. Okay? Ukroid teirasei kaisav kizushas hadchak. And you, Sir, Rav Lezarovsky, the Rav of München, have written to me that this is a shas hadchak. Ki hanalhu blial v'loy rotzin lo get b'shum ofen. There's no way, actually it sounds like he is present, but he refuses point blank to give her a get under any circumstances. Emes hadovar ki kvar nischabru al zeh svorim rabim. It is true that on this topic, many books, many svarim have been written. V'hasheila hoysa b'nisui arkois b'lei chuppah v'kiddushin k'das Moshe v'Yisrael. Roiv Gedoyle Ungaren Hechmiru Badava. I mentioned this before, right? Most of the Gedolim in Hungary were machmir, to require a get. Vaharbe Hikilu, many, so we have most as opposed to many. Many were mekel ubetocham Gedoyle Galicia. Okay, now here we come to the Kovna Rav, the Av Basin of Kovna. Not Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan Spector, but before the war was Rabbi Avram Dov Ber Shapira. He wrote the Tshuvas Dvar Avram. Probably have it here in the Rabbiner Seminar. I certainly have it at home. So he was the Dvar Avram was the Av Basin of Kovna. He wrote the following. He wrote a letter asking a shaila, what is the status of somebody who's married civilly? Do you or not require a get? And he sent this as a letter round all the Gedolim of the time. Michtav choizel chol harabonim sheyechavu es datom b'sheila hanal. He sent round to all the Gedolei harabonim to ask them what was their opinion. Gam ani orachti kuntras godel, says Reb Weinberg. I also wrote a large kuntras, a pamphlet, Sheboi hoichachti she'enot tzricha get. There I demonstrated no get is required. Ubishnas Tovshin Vav, in 1946, no, 1 second, yes. That could be 46. Yes. Yeah. 1946, Hotzi B'noi Shel HaGoyin Mikoven Azal Sefer Dvar Avram Chelek Gimel New York, the son of the Kovner Rav, published the third Chelek of Dvar Avram in New York, V'sham B'Simen Chavtes, and then Simen Chavtes, he brings Shekibel Harba Tshuvos Shel Machmirim V'Shel Mekilim, that he brings many letters of the Machmirim and the Mekilim. V'hachashuvim Shem Bohem Heim mehagon Reb Chaim Ozer Grodzinsky Zatzal shehoira lahokel b'mokim igun sheyi'efshel lahosig get mehabal. Let's stop here a second. Surely Reb Chaim Ozer Grodzinsky needs no introduction. Rabbon Shel Kol Yisrael, the posek just during the war, based in Vilna, who was considered to be the posek hador of his time, and he wrote a letter. The Dvar Avram had written a shayla to him, and he got back a letter which said that in a case of igun, in other words, if you were unable to procure a get, then you could be matir the woman without a get. The implication is only if you were unable, right? Now, so just so that we are absolutely sure what that letter was, I've printed it out for you. I've hunted it down and I've printed it for you. A couple of years ago, I bought 3 chalokim of the letters of Reb Chaim Ozer Grodzinsky. If I'm honest with you, I have not looked at them all that much, but I did find it here, and I printed it out. It's the last page on your bundle, and we're going to look at it. We're going to learn it now. Okay?
All right.
Be'inyan nisuyim ezrachim. This is the letter that he's referring to. So we're going to have to circle back to the rest of the Tshuva of the Seridey Aish, but I wanted to. He's just quoting a letter, so let's do this. Let's look at the original. Okay? Yom Dalad Hey Shvat Ezra Secho Tov Reish. Can't be bothered to work it out. Whatever. Okay, I can work it out. Whatever exactly the year. So who's this written to? Very interesting. I happen to know who this is. Heute kwedi Didia Rav Agon, Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch-Farber Shlita, Rav London. Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch-Farber was a Rav in London. He wrote some beautiful Sfarim, Drush, which I have at home, Keremat Tzvi and various others. Very well known. Know some of his grandchildren-in-law. He was a big Talmud Chacham. And it's really interesting to see the covered that Reb Chaim Ozer is writing to him. Okay, so he wrote this to this Rav Furba in London. Achad Rishas Shleim Teirose Harama. Yikras Mechtove Rishon Gam Hasheni Giyone B'Moyadom Ken Kibalte Machberes B'Shem Birur Halacha B'Inyan Nisui Arav Kois. Now it seems that Rav Farber had written a contrast on this very topic, and Reb Chaim Ozer is acknowledging the receipt of this. Achar Icharti B'Tshuvasi. The reason I have delayed responding, says Reb Chaim Ozer, the truth is I wanted to respond to you in detail, point by point. Because of I had a serious illness, it seems, and therefore I was unable to do so. The substance of the matter, the truth is I have refrained from responding until now. I've based in the Vilkemir Rav. I've based in the Vilkemir, who asked me before the war. He asked me about this Benisui Archois mi London, about civil marriages from London. And basically I was silent. But in recent times, I have been forced to deal with this issue. But be aware that what I'm about to write is not to be taken as a general rule for all Nisui Arkois. The mistafino lahokel begavna shabala based in, because I am reluctant to be makel in a situation shabala based in because it can happen that somebody comes to based in, he means to a Rav, to be Masada Kiddushin, and they say no, we're not going to do it. Machmas bizoyan mishpacha, because of for some reason I'm a chashash isur. Maybe there was a chashash of an isur and the Beit Din are not prepared to do it. You see that? There's the German for you. And he was, see, if I would have learned this a few years ago, I would have gone, what? Now I know what it is. So they had no choice to do. And there was a story, he's acknowledging that I wrote a tshuva to Rav X, and I agreed with Rav X's psak in this matter, that was talking about a very specific case, a specific context, where he was matir, and I wrote him on that. So here you see the scope, the humility, the foresight, the gadlus of a posek. You can feel in his words the responsibility that's weighing on his shoulders. And therefore he is warning, he's saying, really the truth is, all of these cases need to be taken on a case-by-case basis. You have to investigate the context. And not just this. You hear that? Mm. And also, not to take the decision alone. This is something that will impact Klal Yisrael. This is major, and therefore you shouldn't be a lone wolf. You need to discuss with Gedolei Hazman. V'gam ein kavanos harav anal lahatik kol nisui arkois beloy get beloy diktuk haprotim. Achala prat hazeh yotze lahatir. He's referring to a specific case where somebody was matir. He said, don't misunderstand that. That particular case, and I commented on that particular case, but don't take it further than that. Ube'ikar hador. Mashem chalek rum kvoiterose minidon harivosh. Our rivosh. There we go. Okay? So he's writing to Rab Faber and he's saying as follows. You, Rab Faber, are mechalek from the case of the rivosh which is brought Halacha. In Nisim and Chavav ben Nisuin etzel hakoyim ben Nisuin etzel hakoyis notarion, right? Notary. You, Rab Faber, it seems, I don't have access to this contrast, although I could try and search online and try and find it, maybe. But it seems we can work out from the context what's going on over here. Rav Faber must have written to Reb Chaim Ozer and said he wants to demonstrate that you can't use the rivosh and use it in the context of civil marriages. And what's his chiluk? He says there they did it in church. We know that. The Kaimer was Mavorech B'Kol Gadol, and he distributed rings to all and sundry. Remember the rivosh? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's what you want to make a chiluk, says Reb Chaim Ozer. Haloi hoiru shnei gedolei adoir agoin Maram Shik v'Rab Yitzchok Shmelkes and Beis Yitzchok, and the Maram Shik and Even Ezer Simon Chav Aleph shekosav demali nisuim b'nimusei mitzel hakomer or b'nimusei arkois. So the Maram Shik and the Beis Yitzchok says Reb Chaim Ozer to Reb Faber, do not go along with your distinction. They say, Mali, what difference does it make whether it's in church or it's in the town, the Rote Rathaus? Whatever, yeah, Rotes, or Blaue Rathaus, Grüne Rathaus, makes no difference. Yeah, very good. The bottom line is, Einam Reitzem Bekidushin al Pidas Moshe Yisrael, Ein Shum Chiluk Beineim. Ureizem Otsosi B'Tshuvas HaRambam. Says Reb Chaim Ozer, look, I found in the Tshuvas HaRambam, which was published in Yerushalayim in 1934, B'Koyin Shenosa Grusha B'Dinei HaGoyim. The case, the Rambam writes in Tshuva about a Koyin married a Grusha. Naughty, not meant to do that. And he married a B'Dinei HaGoyim, Damasik Shom, Sheyigarshena B'Dinei HaGoyim. He says you should divorce her B'Dinei HaGoyim. Umavur midvarov, She'ein tzarich legarsha B'Dinei Yisrael, K'divrei HaRivosh. Umidivrei HaShai levatshuva nira shaloi nishtamdu, va'afilo hocha ein tzarich get. If you look at that Rambam for context, it seems they weren't even Meshumodim, and nevertheless he wasn't Matzrich a get. So it seems that Reb Tzvi Hirsch-Faber obviously was trying to say the Rivosh is only talking about a church, but civil marriage is not a church, and maybe we could somehow squeeze that into Kedas Moshe Yisrael, or enough to be Matzrich a get. Says Reb Chaim Ozer back to him two things. Number one, you can't just ignore the Maram Shik and the Beis Yitzchok, who very clearly do not make this distinction. We've got to take their opinion into account. And number two, we have a Tshuvas HaRambam, which seems to go against you. And I'm afraid for today we're going to have to leave that. So we're in the middle of this